Welcome to Teaching Truth. My name is Glenn Cartwright. It was in September 2008 when, as part of a holiday in the United States visiting Boston, New York, Princeton and Washington DC, that Adrian and I also visited Philadelphia. Philadelphia is famous for its delicious cheesesteaks, which we savoured. But it's also the place where William Penn, an English Quaker, landed in 1862 and founded Pennsylvania. It's also where you'll find the Liberty Bell, which we saw, Independence Hall and the 10th Presbyterian Church. It's a lovely city and we enjoyed our visit to it, staying, if I recall, in the Sheraton Hotel overlooking the Philly skyline. So why do I share about our trip to Philadelphia with you? Well, because I don't want to take you to Philadelphia in the United States in our reflections this week, but to the biblical Philadelphia, which we read of in Revelation chapter 3, the sixth of the seven churches whom Jesus addresses. To understand the church in Philadelphia, we need to understand the city of Philadelphia. And Philadelphia was the youngest of the seven cities, founded in 140 BC by a man called Attalus II. Attalus was also called Philadelphos. Perhaps that was his middle name, but it's a Greek word meaning one who loves his brother. It's how he felt about his brother Eumenes. And it ought not to be lost on us, and it's interesting that Philadelphia in the United States today is known as the city of brotherly love. Philadelphia was also intentionally built where the borders of Mysia, Lydia and Phrygia met. It was also built on the edge of a plain, which means the burned land, given this name because the area around about it had several volcanoes that had at one time spewed their lava all over the plain. And so on the plus side, the volcanic ash had made and given way for very fertile soil which was actually perfect for growing grapes, which as a result meant that wine could be produced. And the very fact that this was wine country, Philadelphia then became quite naturally the centre of the worship of the god of wine, Dionysus, and he wasn't the only false god who was worshipped there. There were many pagan temples in Philadelphia, in fact to the degree that people refer to Philadelphia as Little Athens. It was therefore a very tough place to be a devout follower of Jesus Christ. The bad news for Philadelphia was that all the extinct volcanoes that surrounded the city meant that it was in an area which was prone to earthquakes. In fact, the same earthquake that levelled Sardis in 17 AD nearly destroyed Philadelphia and other cities as well. But with Philadelphia, actually, it was worse because the tremors and the aftershocks went on for many years. To the degree that those who worked in Philadelphia actually moved out of the city and commuted into the city for their work. They didn't spend any more time in the city than they had to. So in this strategically placed, earthquake-ridden city where there was the worship of many gods, including the wine god, there was a small church, a church made up of believers who were faithful to Jesus Christ and to the Great Commission. It was a great church, albeit it was a small one. And it was great because its members had the right doctrine. They talked the walk and they walked the talk. And the fact that this was a solid church is reflected in this letter that is written to it. It's the only church other than Smyrna that Jesus did not rebuke. Jesus only had praise for this congregation at Philadelphia. Now, can you imagine how the members of this church at Philadelphia in this city must have felt when they read the words that we're going to explore this week in Revelation chapter 3? No condemnation, but only compliments from Jesus. And Jesus, in writing to this church at Philadelphia, wants to send a letter to them to remind them and to encourage them of how much he cares for them and how much he loves them. Join me tomorrow in Teaching Truth as we explore further the letter to this small but faithful church in the city of Philadelphia.